Hi, this is Christy Lister, and we are here today with Beyond the First Response, my co-host Robyn Michael, and one of our executive board members, Joe Willis. How are you today?
Doing well. Thanks for having me.
Good. So
you should have had the applause, Christy.
I know, my goodness, here. And now I don't even know if this is the right one.
Not really.
Oh yeah. Can you hear
hear
it? You can't hear it. I can hear it.
That's the applause I normally get.
You know why you can't hear it? Did I mess with that too? Can you hear it now?
Very nice.
All right. Yeah. See, this is why it's so fun, because I screw everything up and I can laugh about it. So, Joe, every time we do a podcast, we have a question in the beginning. So, Robyn, take it away.
Yes, ma'am.
I didn't do my research, although I do have some Wisconsin things that I can talk about if needed.
I actually want to know this one from him.
Okay.
So, lake, river, or ocean?
Ooh, that's a tough one for me. You know what? I'm going to say ocean. Really, it is probably one of the most relaxing places to be, and it's infinite, right? Like I could just, my first real job was as an ocean lifeguard, and I could just sit there and just be mesmerized by the waves and the sound and the birds and ocean.
Totally agree. I love it.
I like
this is why we get along, not because we're all difficult.
Right, because we have so many similarities, right? Although I think that other part's true too.
Yeah.
Maybe.
It just pays to be a middle child. That's all I'm going to say.
No, youngest rules.
Yeah. Anywho, we digress. No. Okay. So, Joe, you are on our executive board, and you have done a plethora of things to help get education out there, to help start the conversation, and to let everybody know it's okay to not be okay. So with that being said, we first want to know how you have come to First H.E.L.P.
Yeah, so coming to First H.E.L.P, I'll tell you, it's kind of a long story, so I'll make it as short as I can. But there was this conference back in 2017 where I was speaking at a keynote type event, and I was talking about what I thought was the most important possible thing I could present as a keynote style speaker. You get 9 minutes and you just kind of spill a prepared speech. And I was talking about leadership, right? And be that leader now and the importance of that. And I went first. And I think I did pretty well. I've been told, since then I did okay. But then Karen Solomon spoke. And I now MC that event. And in all the years, it started in 2013, and we're doing our next one in March. Only 2 people have ever gotten a standing ovation, the initial MC and Karen.
Wow.
And this is an incredibly powerful event. Like the speakers, do a great job year after year. And she got a standing ovation. And what she talked about was the epidemic of first responder suicide and the impact of mental health on first responders. And it was such a powerful speech. I remember sitting there kind of recovering from my own nerves and everything of having just presented. And I was so mesmerized by what she said, and not just what she said, but the depth of what she was talking about. I knew at that moment I had to be part of it. And so normally, and if you know Karen, she's notorious for stalking people and getting them to learn the message and that kind of thing and what we're trying to share. It was the opposite in my case. I started, following her and kind of stalking her there. And I just knew I wanted to be a part of it. We went to a conference in Sturbridge as our first real Blue H.E.L.P event. Back in the olden days, we were Blue H.E.L.P. And it was the first one. And it was incredibly powerful. The worst hotel I've ever been in, but it was terrible. But it's where we began. And so since then, I've been an advisor, kind of came on at that point as an advisor, and just kind of hung around long enough until eventually they gave me a board position, I think is what happened. They finally just gave in. They're like, he's not going anywhere. We should probably let him do something.
It's kind of the only way to get rid of you is to add you, right?
Right, exactly. Well, maybe that'll wear him out. He'll go away eventually.
Yeah.
And at this point now, being a board member, I'm seeing things from a very different perspective, and truly, I feel like I'm contributing now. Like I am. It felt for so long that just all of the little things that we do to help as volunteers and that sort of thing. And now I get to see a different perspective, and I look forward to sharing that with you.
Fantastic.
You mentioned that you were the keynote speaker at this conference, and just, out of curiosity, what is it about your journey that got you to that point and also made you want to be a part of advocating for first responder suicide?
Yeah, so unlike many in this space, I'm a retired military policeman. So my background is, 20 years of law enforcement, but almost all of that, and not almost all of that, was in the military. And so I would bounce back and forth from doing law enforcement operations in one assignment and then deploy and do the typical, military experience, what most people think of what soldiers do in other places. And so kind of had that balance in that way. But also, I grew up in a firefighter's home. My dad, my stepdad, was a fire chief, a volunteer fire department from the time I was in third grade until I think I was about 5 or 6 years into the Army when he finally, retired from it. So, and just growing up in that environment, my mom was a EMT and rode an ambulance for many years. And then on the other side, my real father, my birth father, was a paramedic. Now he's a nurse, a doctor of nursing actually. And my stepmother also did EMS as well. And so there's, just being around first responders from a very early age. I was a fire department explorer. My first real job, like I said, I was an ocean lifeguard. And then, I wanted to be a paramedic. I didn't actually want to be a cop. I wanted to be a medic, but I decided I just didn't want people to like me so much. So.
Yeah. So you were like destined to be in the first responder world. I don't know that I've ever met somebody that's so like all encompassing with, yeah. What was that like growing up? I mean, did you look up to them? Like, what the stereotype is of a kid thinking that their parents are heroes and, wanting to spend all your time at the fire station, or were they just regular people and you're like, yeah, so what?
A little bit of both. That's a great point. No. So initially, like I was thinking, I grew up in the company of heroes, right? Like It was just every time they would talk, I would hear these magnificent stories, and not so much of the things that I've come to learn now, but I remember being really young and just imagining what it must be like to be a firefighter and to do the things that firefighters do. And my parents' friends were all cops and firefighters, and so like that. But eventually, you're right, I started to see them as real people, and they were my parents' friends. And as I got older, it kind of became the same way, right? Like, being 18, 19 years old as a lifeguard, and then looking up to cops and firefighters and EMS that were older than me, but kind of in that same space. But then they're just people. And I think I started to learn at an early age. Yeah, that's a good point. In the company of heroes who just happen to be real people.
Yeah.
Well, that's it. Heroes are real people. We just only see one side of them during an emergency while they have the uniform on or whatever that looks like in that moment. We choose not to see that they're real people, which then turns that internally, right? Makes it a little more difficult for them to see they're just real people.
Good point.
Yeah, I mean, I think that coming from that side, you have a different perspective on that. You do see them as real people, and I'm wondering if you saw the impact on them as you got older, and then as an adult looking back on some of their behaviors and stuff. Like, do you feel that things are different now as you journeyed into that world than they were when your parents were there?
In a few different ways. Like I remember my dad's first fatal fire. I went to school, only one of the children survived. The rest of the family died. And so it was a big event at my school, right? It was a fairly small school. And so everybody knew everybody. And my dad was, a fairly new firefighter. I think he'd been maybe a year and a half on the job at that point. And I remember the impact on him. And I remember asking questions, like trying to process it, what I was hearing at school. And I remember a little bit of overhearing some of the gallows humor. Like, I don't think he meant for me to overhear it, but I remember overhearing some of that, and I think that recovery method is, one I've used over the years as well myself, and kind of, dark humor. But now what I can tell you, what talking to him and my birth father, and I have great relationships with both, one in the paramedic side of the business, and then the other one in the fire side of the business, and EMS and nursing for my birth father. It's different. Like, even my generation, 20 years behind them, and now 20 years of experience on me, we've got an entirely different world. The conversation is different now.
Yeah, as it is with the new recruits coming in now too, which is good. I mean, yes. I think that's a good thing. I wonder why sometimes that happens. Is it because society recognizes certain things, or is it because organizations like us come along and point things out? Like, how does that conversation change, and how are we getting better through each generation, or are we just hoping that we do?
No, I think it is actually applied science happening here. So the research shows us, first of all, that the younger generations, millennial and Xers, just kind of started in this space because of our ability to communicate through different means. Also, a lot of influence socially in the way we communicate started to change us as young children. With our education system, kind of prepared us to, communicate differently. Well, alphas, which is, the current up and coming generation who were born the same year as the iPad, they, right.
Crazy.
That should add some perspective here.
Right.
It's just so different. On the other hand, what they're learning socially and through, just a natural, organic process, agencies, individuals, because my beard is as gray as anybody's. We're changing the culture too, and there are people active in this space, influencers at all levels, from the patrol sergeant on the street who's my age or maybe a little bit younger, or the fire captain who is as salty as they get. They are genuinely in the space to change it. And then we have corporate partners who, like, FirstNet, built with AT&T, Axon, Motorola, who are putting their money where their mouth is. And genuinely, have you been, I know you guys have, but I'm talking to the audience right now. Have you been to FirstNet's health and wellness page? That thing is about as robust as, anybody's can get. And they're a communications company. It is. So times are changing, and it's not just a generation. And it's not just a couple of, key players anymore. It's an institution. It's changing.
How do you see? So since we were talking social media, obviously, we all have kids that have been active in social media, but to change that mindset of what really goes on, people are picking and choosing what to put out there, depending on their mood, really. Do they want you to see the whole thing, or do they want to see you how they're feeling inside through a video that has nothing to do with them? Is there a way, or is there conversations that you think are going to start happening in the academies or elsewhere to really translate that? Because this is what they know coming up, the millennials, the alphas, this is what they know as to be normal.
Mm-hmm. That's a great point. And so there's a couple of things wrapped into that. They're changing their agencies. Whether the old guard wants to admit it or not, they're changing because of the generation that's coming in. We're watching this war in Ukraine unfold on TikTok right? Like I am intentionally trying to avoid the egregious things that I am capable of finding if I want to right now. And I still stumble across, a Russian jet being shot down and the paratrooper or the pilot parachuting out of the plane. I had no desire to see that, and I still saw it. And so the ability to put things out quickly without thinking, and there's a cost to that. And agencies are becoming aware of it, and we're being forced into this space. And so a lot of the vicarious trauma that happens across the professions, I remember being a young fire department explorer and sitting in the classroom watching a video of, a safety video of don't do this because these things will happen. And then once I got into law enforcement, it was this constant bombardment of officer safety this and officer safety that. But now it's everybody has access to that. Yeah. YouTube is, and so there's that piece. On the other hand, and it's something else I'd really like to discuss this morning is the role of trainers and supervisors in this space and what they could be doing when times like that come up. And so, anyway, that I think answered your question there, but there's a lot to that.
Yeah, I actually, on that note, I just read an article. Well, I didn't read it. I read the headline. I'm guilty.
The headline says everything. You don't need
and then I scrolled. Yeah. But it was interesting. It was an interesting point that school systems need to address this now, and they need to change their curriculum now to get up to speed with how kids are learning. Because they're not going through textbooks, they're not getting Britannica encyclopedias, they're not even just going through Google. It is TikTok, it is Reels on Facebook, So how is the school system going to come up to speed with that and help our kids learn how to navigate this new world?
To me, first they have to stop saying that the kids say they're okay.
Well,
there, they need to stop that.
But I wanted to bring this back to what the supervisors and trainers' role is on this, because we're talking about teachers in the education world. But as far as bringing it back to the stations and to the departments, the teachers of the departments, who I consider to be the supervisors, the chiefs, the battalion chiefs, the captains, what can they do for the new recruits coming in, besides having people like us come and speak to the new recruits and family day? That's only a one-time event. What are they going to do on a day-to-day basis? Or what's your opinion of what they can do to help continue the trajectory and the way that it's going?
There's so much to that. Let's just, on the supervisor piece, right? So you mentioned the recruits, and while that is a tremendous piece of it, the majority of the professions, fire, EMS, dispatch, are people already in the seat and doing in-service training. And so from the training perspective, there's a couple of things that senior leaders, administration managers could and should be doing. And that is investing time in holistic mental health training. When we started talking about wellness a few years ago, we were looking primarily at physical fitness, right? The ability to, decrease, the effects of the job as far as weight control and heart disease and that kind of stuff. But then the umbrella kind of opened a little bit, and we're starting to cover now a little bit more of that mental health wellness and just the holistic fitness, spiritual fitness, all that kind of stuff. And so if you're a leader invested in this space, look beyond the required training and really start kind of thinking about what else you could be bringing in. But from the trainer's perspective, right? Like I just talked to Doug Wiley from Police Magazine the other day. He's an old friend, but and by old friend, I mean we've known each other a long time. Neither of us are technically old.
He's not old.
Right? He's not old. But the one of the things we were talking about was who's the right person to do training. Yeah. And I think it takes an entire community to raise the right kind of officer, right kind of firefighter, right kind of dispatcher, right kind of medic. And so bringing family members in, I think, and I've seen it dozens of times now, the impact it has, and it attacks the problem from one angle. And bringing in somebody from First H.E.L.P. like myself or any of the other trainers we have attacks it from another angle. To have the chief stand up in front of everybody and say, this is important, so important, in fact, guys, I see a counselor. So important. In fact, 3 years ago, I went into, an inpatient program because of problems I was having. Look at me, I'm still here, right? This is incredibly important. But that supervisor, that, whenever I have these conversations, I ask, is a supervisor, a mental health resource and somebody you could and should see as a resource? I get a very mixed response from the audience. And so supervisors need to learn how to be one of those resources and be present in the conversation. We offer a supervisor class as part of our responder readiness programs. But the other day when I was talking to Doug, I said, just imagine this. And I'm going to go with a law enforcement example, but I can think back to many different firefighting examples from, days as an explorer there. You're laying on the mat, like, kind of kick back after, a good DT session, right? Like you've been rolling around doing handcuffing drills and fighting, for the last hour, and you're physically and emotionally smoked. To have that instructor take that moment right now and just kind of look around the room and ask if anybody knows how many police officers have died by suicide so far this year. Just ask the question, right? Has an incredible impact. Like, why is my DT instructor talking about suicide? Like, this guy's been kicking my ass for the last hour, and now he wants to talk about that? You have my attention, sir. The other thing is, Laura King, she's a chief in Illinois and just an incredible trainer, really, really smart leader. Dr. Laura King, she wrote a book recently on called Officer Safety Redefined. Highly recommend reading it. But one of the practices she has as a leader is when she issues a firearm, she makes an agreement with the officer receiving that firearm that it will never be used for self-harm. Now, can she guarantee it won't happen? It's only as good as a person's word, but it shows that leader's commitment. And so I think leaders and supervisors, trainers, people who are as close to the conversation as possible and can be as real and intimate as possible in it are the right people to be having this conversation.
And I think we're seeing more and more of those chiefs, those leaders coming around. And they're not necessarily, of young age, right? They're the older age. So that hope is there, but there's some that just, no matter what you do, it's all about the almighty dollar. Right. And while we can't do that training or we can't provide that for them because it's not in our budget, how do you change that mindset?
Yeah. So thank you. It really does start with me and not Joe, not in any of us, but, years ago, I had this first sergeant kind of point out to me that, while other things are happening left and right, I have two people. They are the center of my universe. These two people that work for me that, as military leaders, but I think it goes the same. I've seen it across leadership in all the first responder cohorts as well, that the nation trusts leaders in these spaces to steward their professions and to care for the people in their charge in a way like no other. I mean, it is truly about when a fire captain rolls up on scene and has to make tactical decisions about how to fight this fire, she knows she's putting people in harm's way. And there's a lot to that. Well, the same is true when it comes to mental health. And if in this moment, I don't give a crap what else is happening around me and how much money can be spent, it only takes me and my time that's being invested to make this matter in this moment. And I can invest in that. So it starts with me.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't take any money to have a conversation, just like with the woman, the doctor you were just speaking of. Just saying that actually opens the door to the conversation. The word suicide, I've said this before, no one wants to say that word, but if we just say it and it's not, I hate normalize because I don't want to normalize suicide, but make the word something that we can all say out loud, roll off our tongues and not have to sweep it aside anymore. It's a real thing. It's a real thing that happens in these departments. So by bringing it up, it doesn't cost any money. It just lets the person know that I'm open to having this conversation about it. And it's okay for you to talk about it too.
So in the responder readiness workshop that we do for supervisors called Supervisor Readiness, the very last thing of the day is on after action reviews and tactical debriefing. One of the things that people often think is that when we have to talk about mental health, it's this whole other bucket of stuff. We have to put everything else aside and we're going to just focus on the touchy-feely, huggy, fluffy stuff of mental health. It's not the way it works. Like if you're a leader who genuinely cares, your thumb is the front sight post of your check on them. And so when I go around the room and I say, you good, you good, you good, all I'm doing is making eye contact at that moment. And that momentary recognition of that person's being is a powerful statement for mental health. And in that moment of, are we good, after not even a critical incident, and I make genuine eye contact with somebody, it sends a message, and not a penny was spent, and I never left mission focused to do it. I'm here to talk about whether or not we had the right equipment in the right place. But in this moment, my eye contact with the team sends a message. And I think that's it. Just the subtle, it starts with me type of stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's where it starts.
Yep.
No, and I want to
go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, two different things. So I want to go back to what you were talking about, the support. And it reminded me of the conversation that Christy and I had with Chief Covington, that he had support from his family, which helped him kind of get through a few incidents, critical incidents that he has. And I almost wonder, like, when you go to get surgery, certain surgeries, part of the pre-process, I think, I haven't, but from what I've seen on TV, is to check and make sure that you have support. If you're getting knee surgery, do you have people at home that are going to be able to support you for the next 2 weeks while you're unable to get out of the chair? If you don't, you can't get it. So I'm almost wondering if that's like part of the hiring. I don't want to say that people that don't have support or don't have families can't get hired, but how do we incorporate that into the hiring process? I don't, maybe that's too far-fetched, but you made me think about that.
I know that it's too far-fetched. So there's the dynamic. So one of the things that we often talk about is, the support network around people, and when we do range, for instance, the resilient skills during the responder readiness training. Recognizing the good, one of the things we talk about is that dinner table conversation about tell me something good that happened today, just intentional joy and gratitude practice. But what happens if you don't have that? If for whatever reason, my significant other decides they don't want to be in my life anymore, my dog, something happens to her, right? And suddenly I find myself all alone. And if I had a dollar for every first responder that I've ever talked to that's experienced what I'm talking about right now, we'd be in a very different place. And so I think that support network you're talking about, there's a lot to that. And I would venture to say that it's incumbent upon the agency to encourage that. You can't vet it ahead of time. Like, sorry, you can't be a firefighter if you don't.
Yeah, that's not what I mean.
I know that's not where you were going.
I was thinking out loud. I'm like, that sounds bad, but you know what I mean. I
do, yeah. And I'm sure the audience does as well, as we're having this conversation. But it is incumbent upon the agency and the leaders in the agency to start building that, what does it look like, the support network around Robyn. She's new in the department, and what does her support network look like? And maybe just her peers right now. That's it.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. The peer support side of it. And I know I'm working with Alameda County Fire Department right now, my husband's agency, and they're building out their peer support team. And just in talking with them, I'm like, of course, I talk about what about the family? What about the family? Because me personally, it would have been fantastic if I had somebody to reach out to on the work side when I started noticing symptoms in Eric. And I'm sure Christy probably thinks the same thing about her ex-husband. And many of us widows saw things that the department and coworkers didn't see. So I was like, maybe I be a family liaison. Maybe I be a part of your peer support team as somebody outside who lived that life, and we can get other spouses to get involved as well. But it just takes a couple people to have someone on the family side to reach out to and feel comfortable talking to versus their direct, coworker, boss, whatever.
Absolutely. No, I
Yeah.
think you're right. And I think that one of the things that First Help has worked so hard over the years is, I mean, obviously it started from the connection, the family network that was built from the tragic loss of suicide. But we've watched that grow now to where it's not just suicide survivors who are coming together to be part of that network. And the conversation is extended beyond that. And from your perspective, you know, both of you having lost somebody, you can offer very unique insight, and being part of that conversation is imperative.
Well, and we
And
get
that's
that,
why
we have that hindsight 2020, right? Where we have that hindsight now, but when you're in it or just entering it, it's like you have blinders on to that. You know that this could happen, but you put blinders on because it's not going to happen to us, because it's just not going to happen to us. We're stronger than that. And that's where, if we give the tools early, that practice, that training of this will come up. No, it might not come up. It will come up.
Yeah.
And how you respond to it and help is a completely different thing.
Yeah. I think this is a case where it's a good thing to be. We can be a Monday morning quarterback.
Exactly.
And we can provide good.
One more reason that agencies, one more of the many reasons that agencies should not abandon families in the aftermath. Because Robyn, you know, I want to take just a moment to celebrate the good happening from the agency right now in your life. Like, I mean, have you already shared that with your audience? Like what's happened?
She hasn't.
I haven't, because I was going to write the blog. Well, I did on my Facebook page, but I was going to write a blog and then share it.
In that case, let's pause there. Okay. I was going to ask you to share it now and give you some of this time to celebrate that, because
no, it's right there. It's right there.
Folks, I will tell you, like, they're getting it right. Like, it's tragic and it's heartbreaking, but to see an agency like Alameda come together and bring you back into the family, and there's just, so read the blog when it comes out, and I hope you do some sort of a video, and you do eventually end up talking about it in a podcast. In fact, Christy, maybe interview Robyn in a podcast.
Yeah, we already have that plan on that, because this is a huge thing, because that just shows, you know, you're fighting, but you're fighting for the right thing in a healthy way, and it can make change. It's persistency pays off. And
it does.
What are we going to do? Yeah. It's not easy. It's not easy to step in and stay in their face.
Well, we are going to have a couple folks from the Alameda County Fire Department on who are going to talk about that personally, and also being really brought back into the fold full speed. I've learned some things about the aftermath right after it happened that I didn't know, the support that I had that was happening in the background that I didn't even know that I had. And I'm, you know, reaping the benefits of that now. But it's a pretty, I don't know. I look at it from the outside, and it's a pretty amazing story. And it's hard for me to say I'm grateful for what's happened, because I'm not grateful that my husband's not here anymore, and that Donovan's dad isn't here anymore, and that he was suffering the way that he was. But just to have the experience in this lifetime of that kind of support, it's something that I can't explain. And I am grateful for that.
I was going to say, grateful is an okay word, like suicide is an okay word.
Yeah.
Obviously, being grateful about something bad that happened is not what you're trying to say. Being grateful that you have seen the blessings out of tragedy, and the mindset growth, and your physical growth. You coming together as one person when you were fractured.
Yep.
So much before you even realized you were fractured. You didn't know until it happened how fractured.
Self-awareness is just off the charts since this. I mean, just working with you over the last few months has truly been a blessing, and watching how you respond to things, and then watching the story unfold. So I will tell you, though, you know, the recognizing the good, it's one of the skills that we talk about in even the most tragic, horrific situations. The fact that there is some good in it somewhere, and you've done well to see that. And so, yes, Christy's right. To be grateful, to experience joy and gratitude in the aftermath of tragedy, it's okay.
I think the goal is to allow people to feel that joy of support while they're here. It's like we talk about people being honored at the Grammys or whatever, the Emmys, posthumously. It's like, where was all this love and honor while they were still alive? Let's do the same thing. It's okay to say you're not okay, and you'll feel that support. You'll feel it now. I hope that Eric is somewhere and he can see all of this that's happening. But just the same thing with meeting the therapist that I met and how he's helped me. It would have been great if we would have been able to get that help while he was still here.
And that's the journey you're on, both of you.
Yeah.
Right now, what you're doing. I mean, the other thing is, you just posted your 10th episode. Just like today. Today is the 10th episode as we're recording this. But your journey, what you're doing right now. And so one of the things I wanted to do as a guest on this, and the last of the executive board members to go through, it's been a couple months now. I want to congratulate you and really thank you sincerely on behalf of the entire organization for everything you're doing, and the way you're putting this together, and the diversity of guests you're going after, and just the underlying intent of what tools can we find now that are going to be applicable to the people who are struggling, and we don't want to lose anymore. So, what can we do? And so thank you so much on behalf of the organization.
Thanks.
And I have to say,
how did you turn this back around on us? We're supposed to be talking to you. It's supposed to be about you.
Here's what I was going to say, because we are spread across the country, right? We are able to do that because of the organization, because of the backing of the team, and a family we didn't know we had, nor did we ever expect to have. And if we didn't have that, this would be completely different for everyone, for every department that's been affected, for every first responder that's struggling. They would be on social media, just acknowledging the not so healthy coping responses that people give out there, right? So we're able to make that happen, or try and make that happen little bits at a time, because we all have a part in it.
Absolutely. When we look at the breadth now of First Help, when we first started off as Blue Help, the law enforcement support that kind of wrapped around as the core, and we would have these occasional dispatcher would really be involved, or firefighter spouse or firefighter. But it wasn't really until this last year that we kind of opened up that aperture and became First Help, and it's become very intentional now. But our volunteer network, as Christy was just pointing out, is phenomenal. Like, we are everywhere. So somebody asked me, where are we headquartered at? And I said, well, we're headquartered in Amherst, Massachusetts, in that area, and I think that's where our PO box is, but the actual office, I guess, would be in Worcester. So Massachusetts, but that's one founder, Karen, is up in that area. But then you got Jeff and Steve, who are in the southeast corner in Florida. You've got, I was in San Diego until recently, but you've got Robyn and Rod, the two executive board members, or the board members over Red Help. And then up in the Northwest, you got Rod Raffretti up there. In Texas, you got Sharonda, and I'm in Wisconsin right now. So our literally, we circle the country. And you got, Christy in Illinois, and I mean, just all over the place. We've got folks that, we are a very national organization with quick reach into agencies and organizations.
Right. And we have boots on the ground. Our boots might not be hitting your state right now, but we are close to your state. So like Illinois, our region, I go to Iowa often, mm-hmm. Wisconsin, Indiana, Missouri, although we have boots on the ground in Missouri, but we're there. So just because the first and foremost, I think the important thing for me was learning, put a face to change, start talking about it, and really having boots on the ground everywhere, because you're not alone. But if somebody's not acknowledging or supporting physically in that state, it makes it more difficult to really see you're not alone. And I think that's been a huge change for all of us.
Yeah. Now, Joe, I wanted to ask you, you mentioned a couple times your own PTSD journey and, having some issues yourself. And I will say for me, just in the short time that I've known you, like you are somebody that definitely practices what he preaches. And it's inspiring. A conversation that we were just having yesterday, Robyn, are you doing the 21-day challenge? Nope, I'm not doing it. So sounds great, but it's just getting over that hump of doing it. But you are in there doing the work. Have you always kind of been like that, or did it take some time? Yeah, it took some time.
I still struggle. Like, I don't want anyone leaving this conversation thinking I got it all figured out and I do the 21-day
Okay,
challenge.
good, because I thought you had it all figured out.
Yeah. Well, then we need to have another conversation.
Yeah.
But it is, I think it is those little things that we can do that do make a difference. I was just talking to, Christy and I just presented in Illinois, and at that event, Laura King was there. She actually hosted it, and she was talking about this thing she's doing with a 30-day alcohol-free challenge, which is a phenomenal idea.
Whoa.
Right? Whoa, right? Like, but
I haven't done that since I was pregnant.
Oh yeah.
I was going to say, having done one a couple of times on deployments, I think, but I have done them. In addition to that, it's a commitment, and some people need it to break the cycle of alcoholism. Some of us who are experiencing a heightened level of stress, myself included in this right now, where it's just everything happening all at once. Some of those little effects that, okay, let's break that cycle and see what happens. So I'm actually thinking about taking that one up. That one's going to be not a challenge for me like others might be, but I think I'm going to take it up. So I was actually going to talk to her this afternoon about it. But it is a daily street fight for so many of us to practice these things. I will tell you, the commitment required, we're all capable of it, and we slip day in and day out. Like, if I had, this morning, I did not actually, I say this morning, it's been almost a week since my last morning mindfulness session. I was doing them on a regular basis, and so I've slipped. So I was talking about the 21-day mindfulness, and I'm in my third rotation of that. So the 10th podcast you all just posted was John and Teresa and their 21-day mindfulness. Highly recommend you listen to that one. I got the bootleg copy. It's a good episode. But I'm in my third cycle, and I love the way John approaches the practices and the guided meditations he does. Teresa takes it Dr. T takes it entirely a different direction with the physical aspect of it and the diet piece. I mean, there's so much to that, but it's been over a week. I listened to the last one over a week ago. I've got some catching up to do.
It affects you that way when stress really hits you. And I know you guys have seen that in me the last probably month, that I feel that slowly going down, and you just have to, it's hard to get right back to where you were. And then you start beating yourself up. You're sitting there saying, it's been a week. I have to do it. I have to do it. We just have to stop saying I have to just do it.
Yeah.
Just get it done.
Wow.
And wellness, and if you don't put you first, I mean, Robyn, actually, I've heard you mention this a couple of times, and it's almost become cliche, but we need to hear it. And you mentioning it, I think the other day or a couple conversations ago, about put your own mask on first, take care of you first, right? I think that's what we need. And I'll tell you, I mean, I struggle with it. It is, like I said, a daily street fight. I literally, with First H.E.L.P. being a major commitment in my life and leading multiple aspects of this organization. Plus, I've got a massive deployment of a learning management system for the Navy that I'm working on. That's my day job, by the way. I'm a full-time federal employee. And so doing, the First H.E.L.P. thing in the evenings is, it takes a toll, but it's not going to do anybody any good. I can't effectively lead in the organization. I can't effectively be who they need me to be at work, my day job, if I don't take care of me. And so editing in my life is one of the most difficult things for me to do. Saying no, I'm at the core, for a variety of reasons, a people pleaser. Like if somebody needs my help with the first thing, and I've probably done it with both of you and everybody else, ask the question, how can I help? And immediately, as soon as I ask that question, I think, I really truly want to help, but what if they say yes? That's one more thing now and I'm committed to doing it at that point. I'm going to do my best to follow through. And so I've been very intentional over the last couple of years, thanks to a good buddy of mine, Jamie Gadori from Outsider Consulting, who really gave me some really good advice on saying no and being editing in my life.
Do you think that that's because I hear that over and over again about with people like us and first responders, that I guess it's the cliche type A personality, but do you think that that's a thing with us that are predisposed to this kind of, like, why are we doing this? Why is it we have to we thrive on the high level of fight or flight of having so many things to do? It's just another addiction that we have.
I want to comment on that because yes, I'm not so much of an addiction per se, but an unhealthy, a healthy/unhealthy coping mechanism, right? Because if you loosen,
most people who are addicted to things, the first thing they say is it's not an addiction. I can quit anytime I want. So here's the thing: I'm actually in. This is what I'm probably more transparency than I should, but this is what I talk to my counselor about on a regular basis: is my addiction to stress.
Yeah.
I thrive on it. It would be like if I had booze in my cup right now for some people, right? Like 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's my go-to.
That's my point. Because if you're not doing that, so I guess you could look at it as an addiction. Because if you're not doing it, then you have to work on what you're feeling inside when you're not busy doing everything else. Yeah. And it's not always pretty, right? It's not always pretty. It gets easier. But it's not always pretty. Yeah.
Well, and isn't that what mindfulness kind of is, to get you to sit in it? I've actually never
sit in your own suit.
I should practice what I preach.
You really should. And I will tell you, get into that 21-day mindfulness experience that Dr. T and John, I mean, really, when you team up, a Marine combat veteran, physical therapist who happens to be one of the most dynamic personalities I've ever met. Actually, she reminds me a lot of you two in that way.
Except
right.
She
practices a professional athlete.
Yeah.
Right. I've been fortunate enough to go on a hike with her and her husband and a couple of both of their kids. I've known them for a little while, and yes, they practice what they preach, and in that way. And so does John, a Navy SEAL commander, retired, just a force to be reckoned with in his own way. But he runs a podcast that you guys, I mean, you talk about it in your podcast, but he runs a podcast called Men Talking Mindfulness. And there is something incredibly special about somebody as hardcore as him being in that space to say, guys, it's okay to be in this space. Let's have this conversation. What does it actually look like? Yeah. It's not fluffy. I mean, for crying out loud, Navy SEALs do it, right? If they can do it, so can you.
Right? Vulnerability is the new sexy.
Right. And that's probably a very good point. And it's whether you look at it from Brene Brown's perspective, I mean, any of the stuff she writes or talks on, folks, I'm telling you, check it out. It's worth it. Dare to Lead, any of the stuff she's doing. But on the other end of that, you got guys like John who are in that space. And so I will tell you that the getting there and doing it and being present with yourself is probably one of the most powerful things we can do.
So let's talk real quick, because I know we're getting short on time here. We have done our campaigns, our I will listen, I will talk, I will listen, to get the conversation started. And now we have a new campaign that I think is very dear to my heart, because unknowingly I've been, not in these words, more graphic words, basically saying, so what? What are we doing now to make a difference? So what? So what if you're struggling? What are you going to do about it? You want to go ahead and talk about that?
This is First H.E.L.P's version of WTF.
Right? I like that.
That's probably a great way of saying it. And so first of all, the I Will Listen campaign just won an Anthem Award. I don't know if you guys have had a chance to talk about this. We are so proud of this program that started as grassroots, just getting people to talk, having candid, courageous conversations in the front seats of a fire truck or, wherever you're at. Just be there, be present and willing to listen. And then we kicked in the I Will Talk campaign because we realized people just don't know how to do it. And so we started teaching them that. But now this I Will Listen campaign. So our CEO, you guys have interviewed him and you can learn more about him on our website, Jeff McGill. He and Steve Huff really kind of started opening my eyes to stoicism and the perspectives of that. And one of the great Stoics, Marcus Aurelius, has this quote, like a soldier on the wall of battle, you have a duty to fulfill. So what if you're injured and need help to climb over? Or where's that effect? I think it's not over, it's up. But either way, so what, right? Because here's the deal, is that for a career, 20 plus years, and still to this day, people are relying on me. And I have an obligation. And if I'm a police officer, a firefighter, wherever, I've got an obligation. I have an obligation to my community that's counting on me. I have an obligation to my colleagues, my coworkers, left and right, and I have an obligation to my family. And I've got an obligation to myself because I'm in this for the long run. This career, at the end of the day, I'm not this job, right? And so somewhere, sometime, I'm going to have to be Joe. And I better be the best Joe I can be. And so what I didn't know early on, and probably damaged a lot, it did damage a lot of relationships in my life, was it's okay to say, so what? I need help, right? And there's this stigma, and I'm telling you folks, like I perpetuated that lie of if I ask for help, you lose your income. Right? I was as guilty as anybody in saying that, not because I wanted it to be true, but because I genuinely believed it was true. And though there may have been a time when it was, I don't know, it always applied to me. And so this So What campaign, that's what it's about, is creating a space where it's okay to say, so what? I need help. Because on the other side of this, when I do say, so what if I get help? Because I'm coming back and I'm going to be stronger and better for it. And you're going to be able to rely on me. So what? I need help right now. And it's okay. It's okay to not be okay, but we don't have to stay that way.
So true. Even on the family side, even as an ex-spouse. Mm-hmm. So what? So that's true. 25 years of my life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So many things I missed in every aspect of my life, but that's okay because now, I mean, it's not okay that I missed it, but we only know what we know at the time, right? And that's what's okay about that. But now I know what I can do. So what if I was the ex? I'm making a difference on what we learned because of that.
Yeah. And you mentioned a good point, and it was with I don't remember which episode it was on. Drawing a blank. But you had mentioned something about when you are present in the moment, right? And you're genuinely committed to doing the best I can right here, right now. And this is where mindfulness kind of circling back around and metacognition and thinking about thinking and all that other stuff. When I'm here and I'm present in the moment, I'm going to miss stuff. If I were to pull back and away and be this distant person, sure, I could look in objectively and see all of the things I should be doing. But how much of life am I missing by not being there? And so you have to give yourself a little bit of forgiveness. And I'm kind of celebrating what you said previously, that you have to give yourself a little bit of forgiveness in this moment for not seeing what you didn't see. But when you get a chance and you're practicing your mindfulness and you are 30,000 feet removed, you owe it to yourself. You owe it to everybody else to say, so what? I need to get help right now. I need to figure out what happened back then, and this is the time to do it. So, the So What campaign, I hope that 5 years from now, like the I Will Listen campaign, we look back on this as a just a deep, meaningful, strategic conversation. How can we change the profession? Whenever I know we're running out of time, but whenever I do one of these, responder readiness courses, I ask every audience, what is it that, if you could do one thing for the professions that you're in, fire, EMS, police, dispatch, to change your profession, what would it be? And everybody thinks I'm there to talk about mental health, and I really am, but it's bigger than that. These are our professions. These are the things that serve the communities, that make a difference day in and day out and save people's lives. And so while mental health is important, it's not the strategic big thing that, the only thing we should be thinking about. We've got jobs to do. And so the reality is sure, on this end of the spectrum, way out here, suicide and murder-suicide and the tragic, significant things that happen that people think that is the only reason we exist happen. But way to the left over here, where operational stress begins to affect our lives, if I could do one thing for the profession, it would be to interrupt down here. Yeah. And that's where so what matters most. Because by the time suicide becomes rational to the irrational mind, may not be too late, folks. We can intervene, and there are systems in place, but many times we don't know. And we don't even see it coming at that point. Then we look back, we're like, oh, here were all these red flags. If I could do one thing, and every audience agrees with me on this, if we could do one thing, it would be to interrupt back here. And so what are we doing to do that?
There was an article that I haven't posted yet. It was in one of the firefighter magazines that I regularly get updates from. And it's something similar to what you were just saying, that someone pointed out, what is it about the service, not the culture, but just the job itself and the protocols involved in the job and the day-to-day operations of it that's broken, that's causing these. We know that they're seeing accidents, they're seeing death, trauma on a regular basis, but there's something way, like you just said, way far back. I'm basically saying what you just said, but there's an article out there.
Right. You have a really valid point to it, though. There's more to the conversation. One of the things in law enforcement on the blue side of this conversation, but I'm thinking Red's probably having similar conversations, is the concept of, procedural justice and what the inside of the department looks like is relevant to how the outside affects its community and the community affects it. And so, what policies are affecting morale, and what's the moral injury. So we recently just posted on moral injury and some of the stuff there. What's happening back here to treat for that? What's happening back here to get those conversations being had, and the transparency within the organization to be able to for a junior firefighter to raise their hand and say, we've got a problem here. And maybe it's not a mental health problem. It might be an officer safety, firefighter safety issue, something to do with fatigue and sleep, or equipment issues. But the fact that that burden exists on that professional way back here, we're certain, has an impact down here. And
it's like that in any profession. And you go to corporate America and it's the same thing. You're in a meeting with a bunch of people at the table, and the one that's highest up is the only one allowed to talk. And the lowly, whatever it is, admin notices something and isn't allowed to raise their hand and speak up, and if they do, then someone else takes their idea. It's the same thing.
And in the best agencies, so I'm fortunate in both this job and previous jobs. I've had the fortune of traveling around the country. At this point, I think every state, with the exception of Alaska, have I actually traveled to do training. And in fact, actually, I'd love to go to Alaska, by the way, if it ever becomes an option. First responder. Shameless little plug there, but I think we need to get some training up there. The one thing I'm seeing, I've been to horrible agencies that are dying from the inside. And in fact, I certainly won't name any of them here, but there's somebody out listening to this podcast eventually. I'm in that one. On the other hand, I have been to some phenomenal agencies. Agencies are getting that right, where it is absolutely okay for the patrolman or the rookie firefighter to say, we got a problem here. And when I see that, I stop and celebrate it in the moment, and I want to acknowledge the fact that that's happening. So you're right, Robyn. It's got to start. It's everywhere, and it's got to start as early as possible.
Agreed.
Okay.
All right. Well, so as we wrap up here, one, we want to thank you for doing as much as you do. And I know we keep you on your toes as much as you keep us on our toes.
Our job.
And that's family, right?
This is a great family. Yeah, absolutely.
It's fun. Dysfunctional and fun. No, I'm kidding. It's
all
fun.
the best families are to a certain extent. So.
Right?
Ours is not special in that way.
Creativeness at its best.
Right.
But as we end up, if you'd like to go ahead and just let us know again who you are and something, a tidbit of information, something that we can hold close to us that can help us get better by Friday.
I love it. So I'm Joe Willis. I'm the Chief Learning Officer at First H.E.L.P. And if I had one piece of advice for Mindset Monday, and that I do, and I actually do this to help me be better by Friday, is I ask the question, how would my future self want me to respond? And this is in the moment when we are in that 30 to 90 seconds of the emotional melee of whatever it is. We are only seeing in a very limited scope. And they use the analogy of boxes of crayons, right? So they say, men, we've got about 8 crayons to work with. Women have about 16. I don't want to get too much into the gender conversation, but there's a mixture there, right? But in the moment where we are experiencing some sort of an emotional amygdala hijack, we suddenly have a 64 pack of crayons to work with, and we're experiencing things we've never experienced before. And it is this, street fight happening inside of our emotions. And if we can, in that moment, ask ourselves, how would my future self want me to respond? And answer that question honestly to ourselves, we'll be far better off. And so whether it's we're struggling with some sort of an addiction, we talked about stress earlier, would my future self want me to do this? Or I'm about to say something that I will regret to this person that I love deeply and means the world to me, but they pissed me off. If I'm willing to ask myself and answer honestly, would my future self want me to say that to her? Chances are no. And I have to live up to that. So that's what I would say. How would my future self want me to respond?
Perfect. Thank you.
I'm definitely going to use that. That's amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. And obviously we've trained together a few times, but I hear it every time I'm taking something different from it. So I appreciate that, because I think all those crayons tend to happen to be at different times of the day, different times of, your life, your moment, what you're going through. So just keep those crayons sharp so that we know that we're ready.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on with us. We appreciate it. And we appreciate everything that you have taught us that we can now reach out and teach others. So with that being said, you have a wonderful day, and we will be in touch soon.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you all so much.